My name's AJ Rassaw. I'm 37 years old. I own, operate, clean, repair everything involved with preserving Record Shop, preserving Underground, New Kent Social, which is the building we have out here in New Kensington, PA.
How did you start the idea of um, preserving?
Yeah, if we really go back, it's going to start when I was like 14 or 15 or whatever, doing your first bands. You know, you're self-releasing albums, kind of pre-internet, at least in the way we know it today. You know, it was an art form called distroing, short for distributing. You know, it was kind of thing where hardcore bands would network. So, you know, it was a thing like, hey, take 10 copies of our album, we'll give you 10 copies of ours, sell it at your merch table, you know, spread the word, you know. So that's truly where it started. And then, you know, gets to a point where it's like, oh shit, now I got this extra shoebox of CDs, now I got this extra car trunk worth of CDs. And then it gets to a point where you're like setting up multiple like 8-foot tables, like it's a flea market or something, at concerts. And then, you know, eventually get to a point where, oh, we're running mail order, we're running an online store when, you know, the internet got to that point. And then it gets to the point where it's like, okay, now I've outgrown my basement, what are we going to do? And then that's where it got to the point where in 2019, I guess, April, so coming up on 4 years here, yeah, rented out a storefront, 1 year lease, just see if it worked. A little concert venue in there. I think it was like about the size of this room, you know, 100 people kind of thing. And yeah, got to the point where within under a year we bought this building where we're currently in, which is now home of you know, multiple concert venues, Airbnb, record store, kind of a monstrosity that's become. Yeah, so as for navigating through COVID, we opened in 2019, April, so we fortunately had a little bit of time there to get our feet on the ground before, you know, everything went totally to shit. It delayed things, but ultimately, you know, we pushed through. Pennsylvania had this, you know, horrible idea, like many states did, of shutting down non-essential businesses. So we had to shut down for a few months. But yeah, we shut down when we were supposed to. And I take great pride. We reopened the first day that the state allowed it. We pushed ahead. We really established the business during that time frame. The venue as well. You know, a lot of other venues were closing down. They didn't see any future in it. Oh, live music's dead forever. It's never coming back. And I didn't buy into any of that. So we pushed forward. That's when everyone else was closing down. We were opening up. We were building up. You know, we're to the point now where we have technically 3 different concert venues, every size range, you know. So, yeah, we just really used that opportunity to move forward. So, yeah, that's really how I guess we survived. I think we thrived, you know.
My name is Darren Mangold. I've been going to shows at Preserving for 2 years now. I started going to Preserving right around the end of the pandemic, so I think like 2021 was the first time I ever went to Preserving. So at that time it was in the current, you know, church that it's in.
What genre would you say preserving serves to?
That's a good question. I feel like Preserving kind of serves at this point a lot of different genres. I really don't think you could say that it serves one. I mean, obviously it's started off as hardcore because it used to be called Preserving Hardcore, but at this point in time there's just so many different kinds of shows going through there. So I really do think that the current name, or at least the most recent one of Preserving Underground, is really super appropriate because there's just so many different genres going through there at this point in time. Like, I'll look at some of the flyers and be like, who are these bands? Like, what even is this? And so, that's not a problem. It's just like, it's cool that AJ's bringing so many different genres and, you know, trying to cater to so many different audiences.
Preserving's open to any and all types of music, right? It's like we are open to things. When the artists want to come here, we're not exclusionary at all. The nice part is the very organic like following we have in the alternative, metal, punk, indie, like in those worlds. Like, we can book shows with like $0 advertising budget, but I hate to get pigeonholed in that. I'll let a bluegrass band play here, you know what I mean? Like, to be blunt, if you can handle a hardcore show, you can handle most shows, you know what I mean? It doesn't get too... There aren't many things, and to be honest, if they are more extreme than a hardcore show, I might not even want to hear. We're open to whatever, it's just that obviously certain shows are going to flock here because they are bands and genres of music that don't typically get properly taken care of in other places, you know? So for the concert venues, even in our original location, which was next door in the basement of the Magistrate building, which is a pretty unorthodox space for anything really, let alone, you know, a hardcore concert venue and record store. Yeah, we actually had a venue over there. I mean, it was real small. I'm talking like maybe 7,500 people. We had a couple, you know, quote unquote sold out shows where, you know, it was maybe 100, 125 maybe. I don't remember. We would cut ourselves off when it was like, you know, reach a point of feeling unsafe or whatever, you know, but ultimately, yeah, that place, what started off as just kind of an attraction to draw people out because we're slightly outside of like the city of Pittsburgh. And so concert venue's always been a pretty integral part of the business. When we moved into this building a year in, basically, initially the concert venue and the record store were both downstairs where Preserving Underground is currently. We had a stage that, we were kind of viewing as like, oh, we do essentially like in-store performances. All of our like record racks and CD racks and shirt racks were on wheels so that when a show was ready to go, just move everything out of the way. And then we moved the record store upstairs where we currently are so that downstairs could be a fully dedicated venue. I saw a need for that. Preserving Underground, everything varies. Every show has different facets. It can be somewhere between $300 to $500 usually, if it's like your standard show, 3 or 4 bands in an evening. And we've been averaging like probably 12 shows a month since we started. It's typically a pretty full calendar. The absolute cheapest you can do anything is the DIY room for $100, which is like, I'm not saying this from like on a rich standpoint, but it's nothing. We did the DIY room down the road, which is our just like, honestly, just like back room that, when younger kids or younger bands are like needing somewhere to do a show on the cheap. It's like, all right, man, here's a room, make it happen. You run the sound yourself, you do everything yourself. That's kind of the point. We didn't have a Preserving Underground growing up that was just like a built ready concert venue that allows the crazy shit that happens at punk and hardcore shows to happen, So, kind of open up the DIY room as kind of an homage to that, and just like I said, hopefully some type of roadmap for these kids to figure out things on their own a little bit.
For me, the DIY room always just feels like more of that raw, like hardcore, like DIY, aptly named show where it's just like there's only, maybe 50 people there, and the bands are usually not necessarily small bands, but, obviously not quite big enough to facilitate a crowd that's going to fill in the main room in a meaningful way. But that kind of creates more of an intimate environment. You know, you're just on the floor with the band and they're playing just feet in front of you, and you know, you're trying to watch the band. You're standing up in front. You never know if you're going to catch one from behind, or because a lot of times the shows that go on in the DIY room are a little bit more of like the more aggressive hardcore bands that bring out a little bit more of an aggressive crowd as well.
Yeah, we open up an 800-person capacity venue. We're looking at least 1,500 to rent the room out, just because the amount of staffing we need to properly do everything, have the proper security. You know what I mean? There's a big building. You got to secure all the access points the right way, and it gets pretty involved. Our sound and light systems are I don't want to say light years, but they're a step above most other venues in this range, and that ain't cheap. I'd say it's my spite venue. I think all the venues in this capacity range in the Pittsburgh area just suck. Not overall, they're not the right place for hardcore punk rock shows that need to have actual energy to them, and where you can actually express yourself the way you want to, and without some dickhead clueless bouncer or some, who's going to tell you you're not allowed to do the things that honestly the music like calls for. Hardcore Museum was, so the real origins, I've had that stuff floating around obviously for years, but, I'm of the mindset I want to share the stuff with people. I see both sides of gatekeeping. I'm not for or against necessarily, but in general, it's like, I want to put it on your plate right in front of you, but I want to make it available where if you want to check it out, it's there. I think I see the negative effects of making it too accessible, because then it's someone that, is going to leech onto it that just wants like a new image for that season or whatever. But I think the information and the history needs to be available for the people that do want it and do want to seek it out, So that was kind of the thought process with that. As far as putting into like museum form, I had some extra square footage at the old building. On some road trip I was on, found an antique radio museum on the side of the road, somewhere on back road, middle of nowhere, PA. That really got me motivated. So I was like, fuck it, if there can be an antique radio museum, there could definitely be a hardcore museum. Unfortunately, because of all these ventures, so the hardcore museum has actually been moved down to a smaller room, a real small room in the new building, but to make way for the DIY room. It's like I felt like giving a show space for, like we talked about, the smaller bands, the up and coming young bands. That was more important than the museum. So the museum's still there, definitely in a crunch down. It's the same amount of information and the same amount of stuff. It's maybe just not as, grand display,
So what's your name? What band do you play in?
My name is Theo. I play bass in Sunami. This place specifically is sick because you have the venue. He has a record shop that has everything you can think of. He has a museum that pretty much did all the homework for you. You can be brand new and come in to this place and just straight up learn about everything. He has a hostel upstairs for bands. It just literally is everything you could need for a venue for a band to play.
My name's Dave Anderson, and I'm shop tender, kind of right-hand man of AJ's here in the shop here. What sets Preserving apart from most of the venues in Pittsburgh is we are all people here that have been through the band experience, and when it comes to the venue, we tend to think about what it's like being a person, watching the show, being a band, playing the show, and catering to those factors instead of it just being some sort of operation.
As for why a band should play here, I mean, it's the only place that puts the focus on the artist. You know, and this is just a reality all across the board, especially here. There's no real money to be made on like the ticket sales, you know. I will say bands get paid better now than they've ever been paid before. It's actually kind of insane. I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but like there's no profit margin for selling tickets. Offers we give bands, I mean, they're getting 90% of the door. The bands are very well taken care of in that sense. That's like the one upside of how things have changed recently. But on the venue side of things, there's no money to be made off ticket sales essentially. So, in turn, most venues do it through merch cuts, which we don't partake in. But, you know, venues look to alternative revenue sources, and 9 times out of 10, it's the bar, you know? So then, in turn, you know, when most places only want to be a venue to make money, the bar then is the focal point. The bands are not the focal point. So everything is about how can we maximize bar sales. And then that turns into like, it's like, oh, let's make the show go longer. Let's give longer changeover time so people get bored to the point where they just keep drinking. Let's add on 8 opening bands. Bands merch will get stuck in some back corner because, you know, they're more concerned about having space for people to get to the bar. All the shit that sucks about concerts, you know what I mean? And just all the thing, like the band is always at the low end of the priority because the only way the venue's really making money is alcohol, you know, in the grand scheme of it.
So, what's your names and what band do you guys play in and what
My
instrument?
name's Harper. I'm in Jivebomb. I play guitar.
My name's Kat, and I sing. Hey, Jivebomb.
So, I just want you guys to go into it, explain like merch cuts real quick. Like, what are merch cuts?
It's when the venue you're playing takes a percentage of they're like,
It's
hey,
fucking.
they're like, how much merch did you sell? And you like lie to them and tell them whatever. I don't know. It's like an industry standard where they take they believe as part of the business that you're selling merch in their building, so they get a percentage of it. That's what it is.
Which is fucking stupid.
My name's Tyler Dawson, and I am the singer of Pain Clinic.
What does this place mean to you?
It means everything to me. I mean, this is a place where, I mean, the past 20-some years I've been going to shows. I mean, this is the first place where it's kind of been done by us and for us specifically, nobody else. In the past, we've gone through venues where we were booking shows there and people kind of looked at our scene like a joke, but in the end, we were kind of like making their venue for them because without us, they were pretty much nothing. So this place is run by hardcore and for hardcore. The other venues, in a sense, while they might make you want to seem like there's some kind of like happy place where everybody gets along and they're doing it for the right reasons, in the end, they're all looking for money in the end. And they're looking to kind of cater to their own opinions and their own views, and they're not as open as it seems. This place is as open as it gets. You can anybody and anyone is accepted here, no matter who they are or what they are. So I think that's the difference. I mean, the other places in Pittsburgh, honestly, are not that at all, even if that's what they kind of advertise themselves as. And we don't have to advertise ourselves as that here at Preserving, because we know what we are.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the aspects just of preserving that are great. Like you just mentioned, the parking is obviously a big one, because I hate going to like Enclave downtown, you know, on the south side. Like, where the fuck am I supposed to park in Southside at 6 p.m. on a Thursday? Like, everyone's down there at 6 p.m. on a Thursday. So like, you go to New Kensington at 6 p.m. on a Thursday, everyone probably left New Kensington. Maybe they worked there and they will have to go home. So, you know, there's parking everywhere, and they have the parking, you know, they have the parking lot as well. But like I mentioned, the merch cuts in terms of bands, you know, that's probably one of the bigger ones, because I didn't realize until kind of recently, just I'm not in a band, but I follow a lot of band members on like Twitter and stuff, and I've seen them in a lot of, you know, recent months and years kind of complaining about venues charging bands merch cuts, and I never even knew that was a thing. And I was like, that's like so fucked up, like, you know, especially venues like bars, you know, because it's like arguably bands are driving alcohol sales, so like, can they charge you a cut of the alcohol sales, you know? Like, so it just kind of seems like a fucked up thing to do to bands that are kind of, you know, out on the road trying to do what they love, you know, to take, you know, that money from them. So, you know, AJ not charging merch cuts is like huge for bands, I would think. Like, you know, for the average consumer like me and you know, parking is sick. The area is relatively safe as far as I've seen. I've never had any problems out there. I think the police station is nearby, which, you know, your opinion about the police, whatever. I mean, they're still there, whether or not they help or not. You know, it's still there. So some people feel safe by that. So there's a lot of good reasons to go out there. New Kensington's a nice little town too. So.
Is it similar to any venues back home?
To be honest, in San Jose, we don't have anything. There's a lot of corporate places that take over. It's either you're paying to play, or it's Live Nation or shit like that. Or 21 and over shows, there's not really room for all ages shows, and it sucks. Playing shows like that is not fun because, first of all, they're trying to figure out ways to profit off of you. Merch cuts, all that bullshit. You don't want to play anything like that. No place should be trying to take money on top of what they're already taking. You know, just cover the doors and all that shit, cover the building, and then just pay out all the bands. So.
One thing I noticed when buying tickets here, you don't use Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Ticketmaster is like the representative of what's wrong with all of this. You know, it's mega corporation, you know, bordering on monopoly, just, you know, looking to leech off of what is otherwise like a pretty, you know, just genuine like appreciation of artistry, and you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, Ticketmaster will never have anything to do with specifically, but in general, I mean, it's just representative of the course that things have taken over the years, you know, right underneath everyone's noses, you know, and it happens gradually. You know, it just blows my mind. Ticketmaster obviously has been making billions of dollars every year for decades now, and somehow when there's this, like, whatever it was, and at their level, of course, you know, outdoor shows and big amphitheater shows were allowed to happen before, like, a fucking punk rock show, you know, was allowed to. So they have this, like, minor disruption in services. It's like, what kind of wasteful on a business perspective, it's like, what kind of wasteful spending are you doing that, like, you can't survive, you know, concerts going down for like 6 or 9 months or whatever it even was for them. You know what I mean? Just every trick in the book. I mean, the fees went through the roof. They were already absurd before that, but they got doubled and tripled in some instances. And everyone's just starting to wise up to it. You know what I mean? It's the one nice part about social media is like, yeah, people can like mutually voice their frustrations, and you're like, oh, I'm not the only person realizing like what a fucking sham this is. So, but you know, it happens on smaller levels too. Like fucking Eventbrite sucks. I mean, all these companies that started as being the antithesis of Ticketmaster, they all go the same route. out. You know what I mean? And I don't know. We, I mean, of course, some ticket fee it's like necessary, right? I mean, I would gladly pay our average ticket price here is like $20-$25. Our average ticket fee is like under $3. That is like the bare minimum it can be. That's without us adding on fees. That's without, you know, like we signed some dumb contract so that we would get like some like sign-on bonus with the company because we only use them. We don't do any of that shit. So the fee is literally the base fee. And to me, I mean, as a customer, I'd be like, yeah, shit, yeah, I'll pay $2 or $3 to save myself having to like drive to pick it up, or, you know, back in the day, you used to have to literally like stand in line at like department stores and Giant Eagle to like get a ticket. You know what I mean? Like that's an actual convenience fee. You know, when it gets to be like, oh, I'm paying $15 service fee for like a $20 ticket. You know what I mean? That's when it's just like, nah, something's not right here. And they got too greedy and they're getting found out, and I don't know. I love seeing people wise up to that.
How has preserving affected the hardcore scene in Pittsburgh?
I think how the preserving affected the hardcore scene in Pittsburgh is given everybody that is into hardcore music a centralized location. You know, because of a lot of the hardcore shows that we do here, a lot of people tend to network here. We're starting to see some new bands form, I think, from that networking.
Since this place opened up, it's grown a ton, man. Let's take for instance, when I was a younger kid, when I was 18 years old, I would go to a show and be scared for my life. And a lot of people glorify that stuff, but it really shouldn't be glorified now. I mean, if you take a look in the crowd tonight, it's going to be mostly young kids, 18 years old, 16 years old, going crazy, getting to do whatever they want, and that's really what this place is for. When I was young, I was scared to death to kind of like do anything in fear of something happening to me. And like I said, that's kind of glorified in a way, but I mean, now it's just so wide open. Since this place opened, we have a new crop of hardcore kids in Pittsburgh, and it's a time where I haven't seen since I've been around, so it's really awesome.
Have you seen the DIY and underground space like affect the Pittsburgh scene here? And like, have you seen any bands like start to grow and like get a little bit bigger because of spaces like that?
So since starting, I mean, this in general, which, like I said, the venue at the original room essentially was the DIY room. It's the same thing. We charge like $100 to do a show there, whatever. And part of it too is like there was this weird restart button with the COVID shutdown. When you couldn't go to any concerts, there was, you know, this small window where people had this newfound appreciation for concerts that, you know, lasted like 3 months. But there were a lot of kids that for sure were sitting at home not getting their experience of going to their first concert, you know, the 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds or whatever. A lot of kids were definitely sitting and watching concerts online, finding out about, you know, this whole, I guess, subculture or genre of music that they didn't know about previously. So there was definitely a big surge in people coming to shows right when things opened back up again. And when shows came back on, there was like for sure like a big surge of newer kids, you know, that you definitely never saw before. So it was a cool thing to see, you know. And then as far as how I think on a smaller level, like what we're doing, how that affects it, I mean, it definitely is. I think previously in most cities, and I mean Pittsburgh for sure included, there's no centralized place for shows. It's always like, oh, we did 5 shows at this fire hall before they got sick of us and kicked us out. And now it's like, oh, my friend's house, we had to, and there's, you know, that can feel unwelcoming, I think, to kids that are maybe on the outside. Whereas here, it's like you go to preservingconcerts.com, you just look at the list. This is where things are happening here. You know what I mean? You just find it. It's not some like ask a punk bullshit where you have to like beg for someone to tell you, is, you know, determine if you're cool enough to give you the address for the venue, or even if it's not like that, and even if it is, it's just some like weird unassuming fire hall that like, oh, or someone's house show is like, is this private? Do I need to know someone to come to this?
Yeah, so you're trying to make a safe haven for hardcore kids.
Yeah, there needs to be a place to experience a true proper hardcore show. I think everyone feels equally welcome here. At least they should. That's definitely the goal. And it's just a place where you can go like, oh, I got a Friday night with nothing to do. Let's go to preservingconcerts.com and see what's going on.